I didn't realize my husband had turned me into a problem to be managed until the day he stood over my hospital bed and told the nurse, in that calm, reasonable voice everyone thought was charming, that I was not handling the pain very well, while I lay there with both legs shattered and metal screwed into my bones. My name is Rena Hayes, and 3 months after that moment, my husband tried to use my broken body as an excuse to trade me in for an upgraded model. 9 months after that, I watched a judge sign the order that stripped him of our house, half his savings, and the future he thought he was owed, all while he couldn't look me in the eye. But the night everything really shifted, the night the revenge truly started, was much quieter than the courtroom or the crash or the screaming fight in our tiny rental kitchen. It started with a phone left unlocked on a couch armrest and a single sentence I was never supposed to read. "You're a hero," the message said. The bubbles from a contact saved as S. "Most men would have left a long time ago. I can't believe you're stuck caring for her." Her. Not Rena, not your wife, not the woman paying most of the bills. Just her, a burden, a chore, a thing. I had to set the phone down because my hands were shaking so badly the words were vibrating. The irony was disgusting. I'd been rear-ended at an intersection by a drunk investment banker who ran a red light at 70. Both femurs snapped like dry twigs on impact. My pelvis fractured, my kneecaps pulverized. I'd spent 6 hours in surgery while surgeons pinned, plated, and wired me back together. Then another week in ICU listening to monitors beep and strangers say I was lucky to be alive. Lucky felt like a sick joke. Lucky people didn't wake up and discover their legs no longer responded reliably when their brain said, walk. Lucky people didn't stare at ceiling tiles at 3 a.m., wondering if their career, their independence, their ability to run for the bus, or kneel to tie their shoes was gone forever. But you know who seemed to love the lucky narrative? My husband, Evan. To everyone else, my mother, my coworkers, our neighbors, he was a saint. He updated my social media when my hands were too weak to hold my phone. He brought my favorite ramen to the hospital even when visiting hours were nearly over. He squeezed my hand while doctors explained that recovery would be long, painful, and uncertain. He nodded and said things like, "We'll get through it," and "whatever she needs," and "we're a team." People cried when they heard him talk. Nurses told me quietly how rare it was to see a partner that devoted. My mother hugged him and whispered that he was the best thing that had ever happened to me. I believed that for the first 2 weeks. Then I went home. You don't really learn who someone is from how they behave while you're sedated and surrounded by witnesses. You learn who they are when it's 2 a.m., your catheter line has kinked, you're soaked in your own urine, the morphine has worn off, and you can't move your legs to get out of bed without help. That first night home, I apologized while he half carried, half dragged me to the bathroom, my crutches slipping on the tile. I apologized for the smell, for the mess, for the effort. He said nothing, but the way his jaw clenched felt like a slammed door. By the third night, the sigh started. That long, theatrical exhale preceded every request. "Can you help me turn?" Sigh. "My knee locked up. Can you just lift it a little?" Sigh. "I dropped my water bottle. Could you?" Sigh. The first time he snapped was over soup. I couldn't sit at the table. The chair didn't support my legs properly yet, so I ate on the recliner he'd set up in the living room. He put the bowl on the side table and said, "Don't spill it," then sat down with his own plate and turned on the TV. I reached for the spoon. My wrist gave out halfway there. The bowl tipped, gravy sloshing over the lip onto the table and a little onto the blanket covering my thighs. The sound he made wasn't even a word, just a sharp exhale of disgust. He leapt up, grabbed the bowl, slammed it down in the kitchen, then whirled back toward me. "Can you seriously not manage one thing?" he demanded. "I am doing everything, Rena. I'm working full-time, dealing with the insurance, cooking, cleaning, changing your bandages, waking up every time you whimper, and you can't even not spill soup. My eyes burned. I wanted to explain that my hands still trembled from nerve trauma, that the occupational therapist had warned us this might happen, but the words tangled in my throat. Instead, I said, "I'm sorry," because sorry had become the pillow I put between myself and the impact of his anger. He immediately looked guilty, walked it back, kissed my forehead. "I'm tired," he said. "I didn't mean it. Just try, okay?" I tried. God, I tried. I timed my bathroom request to his breaks between online gaming rounds. I held my bladder until the ache became a scream. I skipped meals because asking him to cook one more thing felt like inviting another outburst. I did my physical therapy alone when I could, gritting my teeth through exercises that made my vision white out, because I didn't want to bother him. When friends visited, he beamed. He told stories about helping me down the stairs, making me laugh when the pain made me cry. He painted himself as some exhausted but noble caregiver. They brought casseroles and patted his shoulder and said he deserved a medal. He always walked them to the door and lingered just long enough to say things I wasn't meant to hear, but my hearing had gotten good in the silence. "She's just not herself," he told my best friend Zoe one afternoon. "The pain makes her moody. Don't take it personally if she seems off." That night, when I flinched as he adjusted my leg too roughly, he murmured through clenched teeth, "Stop overreacting." Like pain was a personality flaw. The tenderness disappeared in layers, like someone peeling wallpaper off a wall. First, he stopped asking if I needed anything before he went out. Then he stopped checking in while he was gone. Then he started staying gone longer. I picked up an extra shift, morphed into we had to go out after work, team building, which became it's easier to stay at the office a while. Driving back and forth is exhausting. His phone, once a communal object we both scrolled on the couch, might as well have been an organ grafted into his hand. It lived in his pocket, under his pillow, in the bathroom with him. The passcode he changed after the accident for security never crossed his lips in my direction again. The first time I smelled perfume on him, something floral and sharp, not my usual sandalwood body spray, I was sitting on the couch doing ankle exercises while he came in through the front door at 11:30 p.m. "You smell nice," I said without looking up. The words came out flatter than I intended. His footsteps paused. "They were testing new air fresheners at work," he said. "Marketing thing." Air fresheners, sure. I kept doing my exercises. I filed the scent away. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself trauma made your brain invent betrayal where there wasn't any. Except then, Zoe came over with coffee and her too bright smile, the one she used when she knew something and didn't know how to tell me. She waited until Evan left the room to take a call. He always left when his phone rang lately. "I saw him at Harbor Street 2 nights ago," she said quietly. Harbor Street was a bar near the river, popular with coworkers and people pretending they weren't cheating. My stomach did a slow, ugly twist. "He said he was working late," I said. "Maybe it was a team thing." Zoe's eyes were soft with pity. "He wasn't with anyone from his office, Ren. I recognized one guy from the hospital volunteer board. The woman. I'd never seen her. They looked close." "Close how?" I pushed, because if I didn't have details, my brain would fill in worse ones. Hands on his arm, leaning in, laughing at everything he said. The kind of close that makes it weird when a wife shows up. "I didn't want to blow up your life with a maybe, but..." She trailed off. "No," I said, forcing a smile so tight it hurt. "Thank you for telling me. I'm sure there's an explanation." There was. It just wasn't one he was going to give me willingly. I didn't confront him that night, or the next. Cowardice? Maybe. Survival? Definitely. When the person who carries you to the bathroom at 3 a.m. decides you're the enemy, things can get dangerous fast. Instead, I watched. I listened. I counted how many nights he worked late and came home smelling like that same perfume. I watched his eyes light up at texts he wouldn't let me see. I watched him adjust his shirt collar where lipstick smudges might once have been, before he learned better. The anger was a slow simmer at first, buried under medical bills and rehab appointments, and the effort of teaching my legs to remember what standing felt like. My life had shrunk to a narrow corridor: bedroom, bathroom, recliner, 2 times a week to the hospital for physical therapy. Privately, quietly, I started pushing harder in PT sessions. My therapist, Layla, was a no-nonsense woman with short hair and an endless supply of grim encouragement. "These aren't gentle injuries," she said, watching me as I tried to lift my leg onto the parallel bars. "If you want even a chance at walking without aid, we're going to drag your nervous system kicking and screaming back to baseline." "What if I never get there?" I asked one day, sweat dripping down my back from the effort of simply standing. "Then we adapt," she said. "We find the best version of your life in this body. But I'll tell you something most people don't like to hear. The hard work you do now isn't just about muscles and bones. It's about proving to yourself that you survived. People who've had their autonomy ripped away need proof they can still choose something." I thought about that at night when Evan rolled to the far edge of the bed, scrolling his phone with his back to me. I thought about that when he said, "I'm exhausted, Rena. Can you just handle your pills yourself for once?" Even though the bottles were purposely placed high in the cupboard because of his weird obsession with keeping the counters clear. I thought about that when I found the first email. He forgot to log out of our shared laptop before work. I wasn't snooping. I opened it to send a resume update to a client, and his inbox was right there, bold and open, and the top message preview said, "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." I should have closed it. I should have respected a boundary, even if he didn't respect mine. But I'd already compromised every inch of myself for his comfort. I wasn't going to compromise my sanity, too. I clicked. Sabine. That was the name at the top. Not S. Not some mystery. An actual person, with an email signature that listed her as a sales rep for a pharmaceutical company Evan's clinic bought supplies from. The thread was 3 months deep. Jokes about me were sprinkled through it like punctuation. "She's so dramatic about the pain. She cries if I'm 10 minutes late, like I don't already do everything. If she didn't make everything about her, maybe I'd have energy left." Sabine responded with sympathy at first, lots of, "You're such a good man," and most guys would have bolted by now. That shifted gradually into flirtation. "You deserve someone who appreciates how hard you work. Bet you never get thanked properly." The night Zoe saw them at Harper Street, there was a picture attached. His hand on her thigh under the table, their faces pressed together, her lips near his ear. "Can't wait until you're free," she'd written. "This hiding is exhausting." Free. My stomach clenched so hard I thought I'd vomit. That night, when he came home late from work again, I was waiting. Not in the dramatic movie way with a packed suitcase and a slammed door. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my cane propped against the chair, laptop open, the email thread glowing on the screen. He walked in, set his keys in the dish, hang his coat, all automatic, then froze when he saw my face. "What happened?" he asked warily. I rotated the laptop toward him. "I was going to ask you the same thing." His eyes flicked to the screen, widened, then narrowed. "You went through my email. You left it open. That's not an excuse." "No," I said. "But I'm curious what excuse you have for asking another woman if she's free this weekend while telling me you're covering an extra shift." His mouth opened and closed. For a second I thought he might attempt honesty, or at least a half-truth. Instead he said, "I'm allowed to have friends." My laugh cracked in the middle. "Friends don't usually write about not being able to stop thinking about your body," I said. "Or compare notes on how awful your wife is while you're using her disability as social currency." Color flushed his neck. "You're twisting things," he snapped. "Wow," I said. "You went for the classic gaslight speed run. You have no idea how hard this has been on me." he insisted, stepping closer, palms spread like he was the reasonable one. Do you know what it's like watching someone you love fall apart? I lost my wife the day that car hit you. The sentence landed like another car crash. You lost your wife? I repeated slowly. I'm the one who can't feel half my right leg. You're not the same, he said. Everything is about your pain, your fear, your recovery. I'm just support staff, a nurse you don't pay. You want a paycheck? I asked, incredulous. You're using my insurance. My savings paid the deductible. My remote work kept the bills from swallowing us. You're not support staff, Evan. You're a beneficiary. The mask slipped. For the first time, I saw the anger he'd been hiding under all that put-upon martyrdom. You're completely useless right now, he said, each word precise and venomous. You can't walk without help. You can't drive. You can't have sex properly because you're scared something will hurt. You cry if I move too fast. You're a shell of the woman I married, and I'm supposed to give up my entire life because some guy ran a red light? The silence after that was worse than any scream. It was the sound of something essential tearing. Get out, I said once I could breathe. He blinked. I live here. Then go stay at Sabine's, I said. You clearly think she's less useless. Be serious, he scoffed. Where would you be without me? You can't even shower alone. That might have been true emotionally, but logistically, I could make arrangements. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the man who believed my broken bones entitled him to a different woman's body. Saw the man already halfway out the door emotionally, trying to make me believe it was my fault he'd walked there, and something in me that had been crawling for months finally stood up. You should leave before I record any more of this, I said quietly. His eyes snapped to my phone on the table. I hadn't been recording, but he didn't know that. Guilt flickered. Fear followed. You wouldn't, he said. Domestic courts love a good, sad, disabled wife story. The fact that his first instinct was legal fallout, not regret, told me everything. Try me, I said. He grabbed his keys. You'll regret this, Rena. No one else is going to put up with you like this. When the sympathy runs out, they'll leave, and you'll wish you'd tried harder to keep me. The door slammed behind him. The sound echoed through my bones, but under the ringing, something else hummed, low and surprising. Relief. The next morning, I called an attorney. The attorney I called didn't sound impressed or horrified. She just sounded awake. Her name was Mallory Cho, and when I explained over the phone that I was mostly stuck at home, she said, Fine, I'll come to you. Like she was agreeing to swing by a coffee shop. She arrived 2 days later in jeans, a blazer, and boots with scuffed toes, carrying a tablet and a manila folder. She glanced at my cane, at the brace peeking out from under my sweatpants, at the stack of bills on the coffee table. Car crash? She asked. Drunk guy, red light, I said. Double femur, pelvis, a couple bonus fractures for fun. She nodded once. Okay, show me what you've got. I'd spent the previous night in a haze of pain and adrenaline pulling everything together. The police report, my hospital discharge summary, the lease with my name first and Evan's second, bank statements showing my freelance income before and after the accident, screenshots of the worst emails between him and Sabine. I'd printed them all on our cheap home printer until the ink started to streak. Mallory flipped through each page quickly but not carelessly, lips tightening at certain lines. When she got to the screenshot of him calling me a shell of the woman I married and complaining that my injuries were dragging his life down, she actually laughed once, sharp and humorless. You married a cliché, she said. They always think that saying this out loud in writing is somehow safer than saying nothing at all. Can I even do anything? I asked. The question came out smaller than I wanted. I hated the tremor in my voice. You can do a lot, she said. The question is how much energy you're willing to spend. She laid it out in neat, brutal lines. Our state treated most assets acquired during marriage as community property, but the inheritance from my grandfather and the savings I'd brought into the relationship were mine. The apartment was technically rented, But the lease history and payment records, nearly all from my accounts, would matter if things got ugly. Judges didn't like spouses who bailed when things got difficult. They liked them even less when there was evidence of cheating and verbal abuse. First step, Mallory said. You quietly separate your money. Have new payments from clients go into an account with just your name on it. Leave enough in the joint checking to cover rent and utilities so you don't look vindictive, but stop letting him treat your income like an ATM. He'll notice, I said. Eventually, she agreed. By then, we'll have other things in motion. Second step, document. Every cruel sentence, every time he uses your disability as a weapon. Every night he doesn't come home when he says he will. Dates, times, what was said, who might have heard. Think like an investigator, not a wife. Something in my chest flinched at the word wife, but I nodded. She tapped the screenshot again. Third step, keep him talking. Men like this love telling on themselves if they think you're still under their thumb. Don't let him see you pulling away yet. Let him think you're grateful, broken, scared of losing him. Meanwhile, you're building a wall of evidence he'll never climb over. I stared at the neat stacks of paper on the table. I don't feel like someone who can pull that off, I admitted. I can't even get to the mailbox without crutches. You don't have to feel like it, she said. You just have to act like it in small ways every day. Revenge isn't a grand gesture, Rena. It's a spreadsheet. That made me snort despite myself. She smiled briefly, then sobered. One more thing. He's going to try to convince you no one else would put up with you the way he has. That's standard abuser script. Don't internalize it. You're injured, not worthless. There's a difference, and the court will see it even if he refuses to. After she left, the apartment felt different, even though nothing visible had changed. The same recliner in the corner, the same pile of laundry in a basket he'd get to eventually, the same faint smell of his cologne in the hallway. But now there were folders on the shelf labeled bank, medical, lease, emails, all in my messy handwriting. Now there was a brand new note in my phone titled Evidence, where I typed in all caps the words he'd thrown at me. Completely useless. Shell of the woman I married. No one else will put up with you. It hurt to see them in black and white, but it hurt less than pretending they hadn't been said. That night, when he came home past 11, smelling like Sabine's perfume and cheap bar fries, I didn't confront him. I smiled the way I always did, let him complain about traffic and how tired he was, listened to him say, "You have no idea what I sacrifice for you," while he dropped his phone face down on the counter. Then, when he went to shower, I limped over, flipped it over long enough to see the new preview on his lock screen. Can't believe we have to say goodnight again. I miss you already. Then, limped back to the couch. My hands were shaking, but not from fear this time. Fear had finally given way to something colder and more useful. He thought my broken legs meant I couldn't go anywhere. He was right for now, but he'd made the oldest mistake in the book, assuming that, because I was trapped physically, I was trapped in every other way too. While he was out using my pain as a pickup line, I just hired someone whose entire job was making sure that assumption cost him everything he thought he'd gotten away with. After Mallory left and the paperwork settled into neat, threatening stacks on my coffee table, something changed in the air around me. Not the air Evan breathed or polluted with his cologne and excuses, but the air inside my own head, the part he'd spent months fogging over with guilt and obligation. I stopped feeling grateful for the bare minimum and started observing. He came home later than usual the next night, hair tousled, shirt half untucked, smelling like a woman who didn't care enough to hide her perfume trail. I remained still on the couch, stretching the band around my ankles while counting reps under my breath. He didn't even look at me when he walked in. He was too busy wiping evidence of her lipstick from his jaw with the back of his hand. When he finally noticed I wasn't asking where he'd been, his eyes narrowed. "You're quiet." "You're late," I said, calm even. "Work was insane," he said automatically. He hadn't used his imagination in weeks. I nodded like it made sense, like I hadn't been reading emails all week about how she couldn't wait to see him again, and how he deserved someone who wasn't a meltdown in human form. He showered, ate leftovers without thanking me, then went straight to bed. I stayed awake and typed everything he'd said that day into the evidence file. Each sentence felt like laying bricks on the foundation of my escape. Over the next 2 weeks, his behavior became a timeline of mistakes. Tuesday, home at midnight, smelling like Sabine's perfume again. Wednesday, snapped at me for asking him to bring my charger because you're always needing something. Friday, told Zoe he was carrying the marriage alone while I sat 3 feet away, pretending I didn't hear. Saturday, left his email open again. Messages about wanting to start fresh with her once I was stable enough to handle separation. Stable enough. He was planning his exit strategy like I was a faulty appliance. I documented every word. And every day, I went to physical therapy and pushed my legs until the muscles screamed. The pain was a monster sitting behind my ribs, but it fueled me instead of swallowing me. One day, Layla said, "You're walking with less hesitation. Something change?" And I answered honestly, "Yes, I finally want my life back." By mid-December, I could walk the length of the parallel bars without collapsing. By January, I could take 5 unsupported steps before my right leg buckled. While I healed, Evan unraveled. The lies got sloppier, the excuses thinner, the sighs heavier. One morning, he slammed the bathroom door so hard a picture frame fell off the hallway wall. "I can't keep doing everything," he spat when he came out. "I'm losing myself in your recovery." Losing himself, I'd lost bones. But okay, I wrote it down. The night everything snapped was a Wednesday. He told me he was going to a conference dinner. I already knew he was lying because Sabine had sent him an email that afternoon saying, "See you at 8. The winking face was unnecessary. The timestamp wasn't. I waited. I did my therapy exercises. I made pasta. I organized every document Mallory told me to prepare. At 10:43 p.m., Evan came home, shirt rumpled, hair messy, reeking of floral perfume and cheap whiskey. He froze in the doorway when he saw me standing with my cane near the kitchen, upright, balanced, and staring straight at him. "You're up," he said uncertainly. "You're drunk," I answered. "Work dinner." "Conference dinner ended at 8, I said, watching his eyes sharpen as he tried to figure out whether he'd told me the time. "What?" he asked. "Who told you that?" "Your girlfriend," I said simply. "Which one?" He stiffened. His mouth closed, then opened again like a fish gasping for oxygen it didn't earn. "Rena," he began, stepping forward, but I held up a hand. "I don't want the performance," I said. "I want the truth. How long?" Silence. Then, "Does it matter?" That was his answer. That was the final flick of the match against the box. I didn't cry. I just nodded. "Okay," I said. "Good. Then you can pack a bag." "You're kicking me out?" He laughed, harsh and disbelieving. "You can't even climb the stairs without help." "I can walk 15 steps, I said, lifting my chin. I timed it today. His face contorted in something like fear or anger. It was always hard to tell the difference with him. "You're not stable," he said. "You need me." "I did," I said, "until I realized you only stayed because you thought I couldn't leave." "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "Where am I supposed to go?" "To the woman you blew up our marriage for. She's not. This isn't Rena. Be rational." "Get out," I said again. "Now." For the first time in months, he hesitated. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. Not physically, emotionally. Like the scaffolding of his ego had finally buckled under the weight of its own lies. "If I go," he said slowly, voice cracking, "we won't come back from this." "We weren't coming back anyway," I said, and that was it. He packed. He left. The door closed, and the silence afterward felt like oxygen for the first time in months. The next morning, Mallory arrived with coffee and a legal pad. He left? She asked, eyebrows raised. Good. We filed today. We filed. The divorce process wasn't dramatic at first, just tedious. Documents, signatures, statements, financial disclosures. Evan tried to fight it, tried to twist things, tried to paint himself as the long-suffering husband, abandoned by his unstable, broken wife. But Mallory had something Sabine didn't: evidence. When his attorney emailed saying Evan was emotionally devastated and financially dependent because my injury had halted his career opportunities, Mallory typed back, attached, screenshots of adultery-related correspondence, timestamps confirming nights spent away from marital home, and months of verbal abuse documented by client. I didn't have to say a word. His attorney called later. She sounded tired, overwhelmed, embarrassed. My client may be revising his claims, she said. Translation: Evan realized he was not the hero in this story. During mediation, he refused to look at me. The mediator, a silver-haired woman named Grace, sat with her glasses low on her nose, flipping through our evidence. Mr. Hayes, she said with quiet steel, your claims of being the primary caregiver are inconsistent with the record. He swallowed. She's exaggerating. The emails say otherwise, she said, sliding the printed thread across the table. Sabine's, I wish she'd leave you already. His, I can't stand going home. Sabine's, you deserve someone who can still satisfy you. His, God, I know. The mediator's face didn't change, but something in her voice did. This is not a case where spousal support will be considered in your favor, Mr. Hayes. His attorney whispered something urgently to him. He flinched. What about the apartment? He asked. I've lived there for 3 years. And Ms. Hayes has paid 92% of the rent, the mediator said. With income she continued earning during her disability, the apartment remains with her. She can't live alone, he protested. She needs support. She's been walking independently for several weeks, Mallory said, and she has consistent physical therapy documentation confirming continued progress. She still can't do everything, he snapped. It slipped out like something he'd said 100 times. Alone. Grace looked at him slowly. Mr. Hayes, your wife is disabled, not incapable. There's a difference you seem unwilling to acknowledge. He shut up after that. 5 days later, the court finalized everything. He got his clothes, his personal savings account, and the old car with a dented bumper. I got the apartment, my inheritance, the savings, and the legal clean break he never expected I'd have the strength to pursue. The day the divorce became official, I took a walk, without a cane. It wasn't long, maybe 20 steps before my knee wobbled, but I did it, and it was mine. Months passed, seasons shifted, my legs strengthened. I started taking on more clients, my inbox filled, my mobility returned. Not perfectly, not like before the crash, but enough. Enough to feel like myself again. Enough to feel like a self-worth saving. Word spread quietly about the consulting work Mallory encouraged me to start, helping disabled spouses being manipulated or financially drained by partners who treated caregiving like a throne rather than a responsibility. I learned how to speak with women whose voices trembled on the phone the same way mine had. I helped them navigate bank accounts and insurance traps and legal jargon designed to confuse them. I helped them document the quiet violence of neglect. I helped them build exits where they saw none. For the first time in a long time, my pain had purpose, and then it happened. A knock on my door at 7 on a rainy Thursday. I opened it, expecting a package. Instead, I found Evan. He looked thinner, older. His eyes were rimmed red like he hadn't slept. He held a cheap umbrella and a paper bag from the bakery down the street. Rena, he said softly, please, I just want to talk. I didn't move. You have 2 minutes. He swallowed hard, stepping under the awning. I made mistakes, he said. I was scared and I handled everything wrong. I wasn't ready for how much your accident would change our lives. Our lives or your convenience? I asked. He flinched. I'm trying to apologize. I didn't ask you to. He ran a hand through his hair. Sabine left. She just stopped answering my calls. I lost my job. The clinic found out about the emails. Human resources got involved. I don't have anyone else. Not my problem, I said. You shouldn't be alone, he said desperately. We spent years together. Doesn't that mean something? It means I wasted years on someone who saw me as disposable. His voice cracked. Rena, I need help. I know, I said, but you're looking at the wrong person. I closed the door before he could say another word. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt nothing. Because the part of me that used to care had healed around the space he once filled. He wasn't a wound anymore. He was scar tissue, and scar tissue doesn't hurt. It remembers, but it doesn't hurt. 2 weeks. Later, I heard through a mutual friend that Sabine had been investigated for misconduct, selling samples illegally, and was fired. Evan lost not just me, but the fantasy future he thought he deserved. Meanwhile, I was walking, sometimes with a cane on bad days, sometimes without, and every day felt less like recovery and more like rebirth. One afternoon, after a consult with a new client, I stopped by a local coffee shop. The barista smiled at my slow, steady steps. You're doing amazing, she said. I remember when you came in here on crutches. I remember too, I said, smiling back. As I sat down with my drink, I realized something simple and powerful. Revenge wasn't the moment he lost everything. Revenge was the moment I realized I didn't need him to lose it for me to win. Revenge was rebuilding myself from bones he said were useless. Revenge was living a life he never imagined I could have without him. Revenge was standing, walking, breathing free air again. Revenge was finally, not caring what happened to him at all. And that was the end of him. Not with a bang, not with a scream, not with a court ruling, with silence, with growth. With me walking away on legs he swore would never carry me again.